The night my parents showed up with suitcases, the porch light made everything look more dramatic than it already was. 2 rolling bags, 1 overstuffed duffel, a laundry basket I recognized from my childhood bathroom. My mom stood there in her good cardigan, the one she wore to church and doctor appointments. My dad's shoulders were slightly slumped under his old brown jacket, like the hanger inside had given up. Behind me, in the hallway, my husband's voice drifted out from the living room. "Is that them?" he called. I didn't answer, because my mom had just said the line that would rearrange my entire life. "It'll only be for a few months," she said, smiling like this was a favor to us. A few months. Like that was nothing. Like it wouldn't touch the walls, the air, the marriage I'd spent 7 years trying to build with my own rules instead of theirs. I forced a smile. "Come in," I said. My dad stepped over the threshold first, dragging 1 suitcase behind him. He nudged off his shoes automatically, like he was entering any house he belonged in. My mom didn't remove hers. She never did unless someone asked. And I didn't ask. Jake appeared behind me then, wiping his hands on a dish towel, trying too hard to look relaxed. "Hey," he said, giving them both a quick, polite smile. "You made it." Mom beamed. "There he is," she said, "my favorite son-in-law." Jake chuckled softly. "I'm your only son-in-law," he said. "That's what makes you my favorite," she replied, and they both laughed like it was the first time she'd ever used that line. Dad patted Jake on the shoulder. "Thanks for letting us crash here for a bit," he said. "We appreciate it." Jake glanced at me over their heads. Just for a bit. We'd had the conversation 2 weeks ago, at this same kitchen table, on speakerphone. Mom's voice had been overly bright. "Well, you know how the landlord is," she'd said. "He's selling the building. We have to be out by the end of the month." I'd pressed the phone between us, looking at Jake's face. He'd stayed neutral. Listened. Dad had chimed in. "We're just in a bit of a pinch," he'd said. "We don't want to rush into any old apartment. You know how your mother is." Mom laughed, high-pitched. "We thought," she'd continued carefully, "maybe we could stay with you for a little while, just until we figure things out." I'd felt the old reflex rise, of course. Yes, of course. Come here. Let us fix it. But I wasn't just a daughter anymore. I was a wife too. Jake had caught my eye. "Let's talk about what that would look like," he'd said, diplomatic, buying us time. Mom had sounded relieved. "Oh, sweetheart, it'd just be temporary," she'd insisted. "A few months, tops. We'll be out of your hair before you know it." We'd talked logistics. The guest room. The car situation. My dad's back. My mom's new medication. At the end of the call, Jake had said, slowly, "I'm okay with it for a few months, if we have some ground rules." At the word rules, my mom had gone quiet. "Of course," she'd said after a beat. "Whatever you two need." Now, standing in the foyer with their bags at our feet, I wondered if she remembered saying that. Jake took Dad's suitcase. "Let me get this to the guest room," he said. "You guys want some tea? Coffee?" "Tea would be lovely," Mom said. She turned to me, lowering her voice. "Goodness," she whispered, "he's domesticated, isn't he?" I managed a small laugh. "Mom." "What?" she said. "It's a compliment." I took a breath. "Do you want to sit down?" I asked. "It's been a long drive." Mom stepped past me into the living room like she'd walked into this house 100 times, even though she'd only visited a handful. She paused just before the couch and looked around. Her eyes took in everything. The bookshelf we'd built together. The gallery wall of mismatched frames. The throw pillows she'd once called impractical. She nodded, like she was judging but pleased. "You've made it cozy," she said. "Thanks," I replied. I didn't add that we'd made it cozy for us on purpose. That every decision, from the Navy couch to the cheap IKEA rug, had felt like a small rebellion against the beige leather and plastic runners of the house I grew up in. Dad lowered himself onto the far end of the sofa with a soft grunt. "Back's been acting up," he said. Mom sat next to him, already reaching for the throw blanket. I stood for a second, watching them settle like they'd found their spot in a TV show that might last 10 seasons. Jake walked in with a tray, the mug Mom liked, the one with the blue stripes, Dad's tea black, no sugar. He'd remembered. Of course he had. We were both good at this. Hosting, taking care, making things comfortable for everyone else. And for the next 10 minutes, I let myself pretend that this was okay. That this was an extended visit. That a few months would come and go quietly. Then Mom asked the question that made my heart drop into my stomach. "So," she said, blowing on her tea, "where will the baby go when we move the crib in?" Jake choked on his tea. "We don't have a baby," he said. Mom waved a hand. "You know what I mean," she replied. "The future baby. When you have one, we'll still be here to help, right?" She said it lightly. Like a joke. Like a dream. Except something in her tone told me she'd already pictured it. All of it. And for the first time since they'd pulled into the driveway, I felt a flicker of something I didn't want to name. Not guilt. Not obligation. A clean, sharp line of fear. Because suddenly, a few months didn't sound like a plan. It sounded like a beginning. The first week was almost nice. That was the worst part. If it had been terrible from day one, maybe I would have spoken up sooner. Maybe I would have pointed to the red flags as proof. But the beginning was soft. Mom cooked. She made real dinners while I finished work, filling the house with the smell of garlic and onions and something simmering slowly. "You work so hard," she'd say when I tried to take the knife from her. "Let me help." Dad fixed things. He tightened the loose cabinet door, adjusted the squeaky hinge on the bathroom closet, changed the air filter I'd forgotten about. "House always needs something," he muttered, half to himself, like this was his territory now. Jake and Dad watched football together in the evenings, arguing about calls and snacks and whose team was cursed. Sometimes I'd stand in the kitchen doorway and watch them, and a small, traitorous part of me would think, this isn't so bad. But then the hairline crack started. Little things. Breakfast, the first Saturday. I padded into the kitchen in shorts and an oversized t-shirt, hair in a messy bun, still sleepy. Mom turned from the stove, spatula in hand, and did a double take. "Oh," she said, "well, that's casual." I blinked. "It's Saturday," I said, reaching for a mug. "Your father's here," she replied. Dad looked up from his phone, oblivious. I frowned. "I live here," I said slowly. "These are my pajamas." Mom sniffed. "Well, I was always taught to be presentable when people are in the house." There was no heat in her voice. Just that familiar, pointed sweetness that made every sentence feel like a gentle scolding. I laughed it off, poured my coffee, and told myself I was being sensitive. Then came the dishes. Jake and I had a system. He cooked, I did dishes. Or I cooked, he did dishes. We didn't keep score. We just flowed. But now, every time Jake left a pan to soak in the sink, Mom would make a small sound. Not quite a sigh. More like an exhale with commentary. I caught her one afternoon, standing at the sink, scrubbing hard. "I told you I'd do that," I said. She shook her head. "You two leave things," she replied. "It's not a big deal. I'm used to keeping a house." I leaned against the counter. "Mom, you're a guest," I said. She smiled. "And this is how I like to be a guest," she answered, contributing. It sounded noble, except this wasn't contributing. This was rewriting the rules in a language we hadn't agreed on. At night, in bed, Jake would roll onto his side and look at me in the dark. "You okay?" he'd ask. "Yeah," I'd lie. "They're adjusting. We're adjusting." He was quiet for a moment. Then he'd say the thing I didn't know how to answer. "I miss walking around naked." I snorted. "Jake." "I'm serious," he whispered, smiling. "I miss just us, our weird little routines." I did too. The pajamas as real clothes days. The dance in the kitchen to bad 80-second songs nights. The cereal for dinner evenings when we were tired and no one judged. Now, there was always someone else in the room. Always another pair of ears. Another pair of eyes. One afternoon, Mom knocked on our bedroom door and walked in before I could answer. I was sitting on the floor, folding laundry. She looked around, assessing. "Still haven't put curtains up," she said. "Your neighbors can see right in." I exhaled, slow. "We're on the second floor," I said. "It's fine." She pursed her lips. "Well, when you have a baby, you'll want more privacy," she said. "Sun wakes them early." There it was again. When you have a baby? Like she'd rescheduled her life to align with a timeline we hadn't even agreed on. That night, at dinner, Dad brought it up casually. "Your mother and I were thinking," he said, spearing a carrot. "It'll be easier when the baby comes if we're already here." Jake choked on his water this time. I stared. "We're not trying right now," I said flatly. Mom laughed. "No one's ever really ready," she said. "You just do it, and then you adjust." Jake set his glass down, eyes calm but firm. "We're not there yet," he said. "We've got some stuff we want to do first." Mom waved a hand. "Like what?" she asked. "Travel? Careers?" She said the words like they were hobbies. Jake's jaw flexed almost imperceptibly. "Like live our life as a couple, a bit longer," he said. Mom smiled. "And you will," she replied. "We're just saying, when it happens, it'll be nice to have us here." My chest tightened. We hadn't talked to them about how hard things had been the past year. About the miscarriage. About the fight in the parking lot of the fertility clinic. About the month we barely spoke. To my parents, we were just behind schedule. To them, our home was a place they could fit into, mold into the shape they recognized. To us, it had been a fragile shell we'd barely held together. And now, with every helpful suggestion, every casual comment, I felt that shell thinning. Like one more subtle criticism, one more boundary crossed, would crack it clean open. 3 months came and went. No one mentioned it. Not my parents. Not Jake. Not me. At first, I pretended not to notice. I told myself we'd talk about it when things settled. After the holidays. After Dad's back injections. After Mom's cardiology follow-up. There was always something. Just until after became the new deadline. Every Sunday night, I'd stand at the stove, stirring something, and feel this creeping sense of permanence. Their toothbrushes in our bathroom, Mom's extra coats on our hallway hooks, Dad's slippers under the coffee table. Their mail started arriving. Mom changed her address for her bank statements. "It's just easier," she said. I stared at the envelope in her hand. Easier for who? The first big crack in my denial came in the form of a storage unit brochure on the counter. I found it under Dad's reading glasses one morning. "Thinking of getting rid of more stuff?" I asked lightly, holding up the pamphlet. Dad glanced at it. "Oh," he said, "that's for the furniture." I frowned. "What furniture?" He shrugged. "From the old place," he said. "We put the dining set and your mother's hutch in storage, just in case." "In case of what?" I asked. Dad hesitated. "In case we don't find somewhere we like," he said finally. No point rushing into some tiny apartment. I swallowed. I thought you were looking, I said. We are, he replied, but the market's crazy, and this works for now. This, our house, our life, works for now. That night, after my parents went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with Jake. The only light came from the range hood, casting a dim, soft glow. Jake stared at his hands. We have to talk about this, he said. I knew what this meant. I pretended I didn't. What do you mean? He looked up, tired. Em, he said, it's been 3 months. I know, I said quickly. They're trying. They're in a tough spot. Jake nodded slowly. I'm not saying they're bad people, he said. I'm saying this arrangement is not what we agreed to. I felt my throat tighten. They've had a lot going on, I said. Dad's back, Mom's heart. And we've had nothing? He cut in, not unkindly. I went silent. He exhaled. I feel like a guest in my own house, he said. The words hit harder than any of Mom's comments. Because I'd felt it too. The way we spoke quieter at night. The way we shut our door more often. The way we checked the hallway before hugging too long in the kitchen. I don't want to be the bad guy, I whispered. Jake let out a short, humorless laugh. Why is it that any time we talk about basic boundaries, it turns into bad guy? He asked. I didn't have an answer. He continued. I see how your mom looks at you when you push back, he said. Like you're ungrateful. I see how your dad disappears into the TV when things get tense. He paused. And I see how you fold to keep the peace, he added softly. My chest ached. Those patterns didn't start here, Jake said. They started in their house, and now they've brought them into ours. A part of me bristled. They're my parents, I said, defensive. I know, he replied gently, and I love them. I do. But I also love you, and I love us, and I'm watching us disappear in our own home. Silence stretched between us. The dishwasher hummed in the background. From down the hall, I could hear my dad's soft snore through the partially closed guest room door. I don't know how to tell them to go, I whispered. Jake nodded. I get it, he said. But if we don't, this doesn't stop. I swallowed. My brain jumped ahead, uninvited. Christmas. Then it's winter. We'll look in spring. Spring. Then your mom's surgery is in May. We'll look after recovery. Summer. Then, the market's weird. We'll wait until it settles. And in the meantime, another year of our life would quietly rearrange itself around their needs. Jake reached across the table and took my hand. I didn't marry your parents, he said softly. I married you. I looked at him, at the tired kindness in his eyes. I know, I said. What I didn't say was, where do I put the guilt? Because in my family, saying I need space sounded exactly like I don't love you. And I wasn't sure I was ready to hear my mother say the word I feared most. Selfish. The fight started with the thermostat. Most fights like this do not start with the thing they're about. They start with something small, something easy to point to. The real thing stays under the floorboards, growing mold. It was a Thursday evening in February. Outside, the air had that dry, cold bite that made every draft feel personal. I came home from work to find the house set at 76. Dad was in the recliner. Mom was wrapped in her cardigan and the living room blanket, scrolling on her tablet. Why is it so hot in here? I asked, dropping my bag. Dad shrugged. Your mother's cold, he said. Mom didn't look up. Old houses are drafty, she said. We turned it up a little. You can afford it. The last sentence landed with a thud. I bit back a retort. It's expensive to keep it this high, I said. We'll help with the bill, Mom replied quickly. They wouldn't. They hadn't. Jake walked in from the kitchen, eyebrows lifted. Oh, he said. Sauna night. Dad chuckled. Kids today, he muttered. You don't know cold. Jake leaned against the doorway. Our heating system knows it, he said lightly. Mom sighed. Can't we just be comfortable? She asked. Later, after dinner, when my parents went to bed, Jake and I brushed our teeth side by side in the cramped bathroom, steam curling off the mirror. So, he said, foam around his mouth, did you talk to them? I knew what he meant. We'd planned tonight. We'd rehearsed. We were going to sit them down, talk about timelines, make a plan. I tried, I said. He spat, rinsed, looked at me in the mirror. And? He asked. I looked down. We argued about the thermostat instead, I admitted. Jake stared at me for a long moment. Then he walked into the bedroom. When I followed, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. Jake, I started. He held up a hand. I can't keep doing this, he said quietly. My stomach dropped. Doing what? I asked, even though I knew. He looked up. Waiting for you to choose us, he said. The words felt like a slap. That's not fair, I said, defensive. They're my parents. I didn't choose them. They're part of my life. Being part of your life is different from living in our house indefinitely, he replied. I went silent. He continued. I feel like I lost my wife to a roommate situation we never consented to, he said. I see you shrinking yourself to keep them comfortable, and I watch you disappear. Tears burned my eyes. That's not true, I said. He held my gaze. Tell me, he said gently, when was the last time we talked about us? About our plans? About trying again? My throat closed. We hadn't. Not really. Not since my parents moved in. Because there was always someone in the next room. Because there was no privacy for hard conversations. Because my mom's presence made every mention of babies feel like a performance. Jake's voice softened. I'm not saying this to hurt you, he said. I'm saying this because I'm scared. I'm scared that if we don't put a fence around our life, it's going to get swallowed. A tear slipped down my cheek. I don't know how to do this without being the villain, I whispered. Jake's expression was pained. Maybe, he said slowly, you're going to have to let someone be upset with you. He paused. Maybe you're going to have to let your mom think you're selfish, he added, because right now, you're punishing yourself instead. The idea of my mom believing I'd failed her made my chest ache. She'll say we abandoned them, I said. Jake exhaled. They're not helpless, he replied. Dad's back. Has a doctor, Jake said. Your mom's heart has a cardiologist. There are apartments. There are condos. There are options. He lowered his voice. What we don't have is another marriage, he said. Silence stretched between us. Then he said the words I'd hoped he'd never say. Em, if this doesn't change, I don't know how we stay okay, he whispered. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. A weather report from inside his heart. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the carpet. I thought about the girl I was at 24, standing in a white dress in front of him, promising, forsaking all others. I'd thought all others meant romantic partners. I hadn't realized it might mean the emotional marriage I'd maintained with my parents. I took a shaky breath. Okay, I said softly. We'll talk to them. For real. Jake nodded. When? He asked. Tomorrow, I replied. My voice shook. I'll start it, I added. He looked at me, searching my face. Thank you, he said. We turned off the light. In the dark, I listened to the old house creak, to my parents' muffled coughs down the hall. And for the first time, Instead of feeling comforted by their presence, I felt something else. Crowded. We didn't schedule it. You can't put blow up your family system on a calendar. It happens in real time, in messy moments. On Sunday afternoon, Mom was at the kitchen table with her notebook, paying bills. Dad was in the living room, half watching golf. Jake caught my eye and gave the tiniest nod. Now or never. I dried my hands on a dish towel, heart pounding in my throat. Mom, I said, can you and Dad come sit in here for a minute? Mom looked up, pen hovering. Is something wrong? She asked immediately. Just want to talk? I said. She narrowed her eyes, suspicious. Dad shuffled in a moment later, turning off the TV reluctantly. Jake sat beside me at the table, close enough that our shoulders touched. I could feel the tension in his body. Mom sat opposite us, arms folded. Dad lowered himself into the chair with a grunt. The air felt thick. I swallowed. So, I began, you've been here for about 5 months now. Mom's eyes flashed. Is that a problem? She asked. My stomach clenched. No, I said quickly. That's not what Jake cleared his throat. We want to talk about what's next, he said calmly. About timelines. Dad frowned. Timelines? He repeated. What do you mean? Mom leaned back, lips pressing into a thin line. I felt the familiar urge to soften, to apologize, to say never mind. Instead, I took a breath. When you moved in, I said, we talked about a few months while you looked for a new place. Mom stiffened. Yes, she said slowly, and we've been looking. Dad nodded vaguely. It's tricky out there, he added. Jake kept his voice neutral. We understand, he said. We also need our home back. Silence fell like a dropped plate. Mom's face changed, hurt, then anger, then something sharper. Your home, she repeated, as opposed to what? Our temporary shelter? Mom, I started. She cut me off. I gave you a home, she said, voice rising. For 18 years, you lived under my roof. I fed you. I clothed you. I worked extra shifts so you could go to that fancy college. I felt my cheeks burn. I know, I said, and I'm grateful. She laughed. Bitter? Doesn't sound like it, she shot back. Dad rubbed his hands together nervously. Let's not make this a big deal, he murmured. Jake spoke calmly. We're not throwing you out, he said. We're talking about a plan, a date when you'll be in your own place again. Mom's eyes narrowed. A date, she said. You want to schedule us out of your life. That's not what he said, I replied, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Mom leaned forward. You know what this feels like? She said. It feels like you can't wait to get rid of us. The word rid stung. That's not true, I said. She scoffed. Ever since you started your boundaries and your therapy and your modern marriage nonsense, you've been pulling away, she said. Now we're, what? In the way? Tears pricked my eyes. Jake squeezed my knee under the table. Mom, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. We love you. We love Dad. This isn't about not wanting you in our life. It's about how we're living. Dad shifted uncomfortably. We don't bother you, he said. We stay in our room most nights. Jake's jaw tightened. That's part of the problem, he said gently. Everyone's tiptoeing. We've lost privacy. Mom's eyes snapped to him. Oh, I see, she said. We're interrupting your alone time. The way she said alone made my skin crawl. Mom, that's not fair, I said. She threw her hands up. Oh, excuse me for existing, she said. Excuse me for being old and inconvenient. I felt heat crawl up my neck. This isn't about you being old, I said. It's about the fact that this was supposed to be temporary, and it's becoming open-ended. Dad exhaled. Where do you expect us to go? He asked. To an apartment, Jake said. Or a condo, or senior housing, something that's yours. Mom shook her head in disbelief. You want us in some little box, she said, where no one cares if we live or die. I felt my chest ache. That's not what we're saying, I said, voice cracking. We're saying you deserve a place that works for you, and we deserve a home that works for us. Mom's eyes filled with tears. After everything we've done, she whispered, we raised you, we sacrificed. And now, the first time we need help, you're already talking move-out dates. The guilt landed exactly where she threw it. In the center of my chest. I took a breath that felt like swallowing glass. This isn't the first time you've needed help, I said quietly. I've been helping for years. Driving, appointments, finances. We have helped a lot. Dad's face flushed. We didn't ask you to tally, he muttered. Jake spoke up, firmer now. No one is tallying, he said. We're talking about reality. We're 4 adults sharing a space built for 2. Mom's voice dropped. You sound like a landlord, she said, not family. My eyes burned. Mom, I whispered, family doesn't mean unlimited access. She recoiled. I don't even know who you are anymore, she said. You used to be so generous. I swallowed hard. I used to be terrified of disappointing you, I said. I still am. Her expression softened for a fraction of a second, then hardened again. This is about Jake, she said suddenly. He doesn't want us here. Jake blinked. This is about both of us, he said quietly. Emma and I have talked about this together. Mom snorted. Do you see what he's done? She said, looking at me. He's turned you against your own parents. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was a clean, internal click. No, I said, my voice low but clear. He hasn't. Everyone looked at me. I continued. I asked you to move in, I said. I opened this door, and I'm the one closing it now. Mom's eyes filled with fresh tears. So that's it, she said. We're being evicted. Stop using those words, I said, my own eyes blurring. We're not evicting anyone. We're asking you to make a plan. We will help you find a place. We will help you move. We will be there. But we cannot keep living like this. Dad looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something besides defensiveness in his face. I saw tiredness. You really want us gone, he said softly. I shook my head, frustrated tears spilling over. I want you safe, I said. I want us sane. I want visits, dinners, weekends, not this constant tension. Silence. Mom's shoulders slumped. And what if we refuse? She asked quietly. My heart dropped. Jake inhaled beside me. We're not going to kick you out, he said, but we are going to stop pretending this is fine. Mom stared at him, then at me. Then she stood up. Well, she said, voice brittle, I guess we know where we stand. She walked out of the kitchen, down the hall, and closed the guest room door with a soft, final click. Dad sat there for a moment longer. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. Your mother doesn't handle change well, he murmured. I know, I said. He sighed. I'll talk to her, he said, pushing himself up. When he left, the silence in the kitchen felt like a weight. Jake reached for my hand. I pulled away. Not because I was angry at him, because everything hurt. I'm the bad guy, I whispered. Jake's voice was gentle. No, he said. You're the one who finally said out loud what's been true for months. I put my face in my hands and sobbed. Not because I didn't believe him, but because I knew what was coming. The cold shoulders, the passive-aggressive comments, the stories told to extended family about how they kicked us out. And I'd have to live with that, with the version of me that existed in my parents' heads now, the selfish daughter, the one who chose her marriage, the one who chose her own home. They didn't move out right away. Of course they didn't. It took 6 more weeks. 6 weeks of half quiet, half storm. For a few days, Mom barely spoke to me. She addressed most of her questions to Jake. How was your day? Do you need anything from the store? Do you think this show is stupid? Jake answered politely, never taking the bait. Dad alternated between siding with her and staying out of it. One night, I overheard them in the guest room. We can't stay here forever, Dad said. We could, Mom replied. They're just being dramatic. We're in their space, he said. You know how it is. When we were their age, would we have wanted my parents living with us? Mom went quiet. Then softly, we didn't have anyone, she said. No help, no support. Dad sighed. Maybe that's why you're clinging so hard, he said. You want a do-over. I stood in the hallway, feeling like an eavesdropper in my own house. The next week, Dad asked me to drive them to see an apartment. It was a senior-friendly complex 15 minutes away. Just looking, Mom said tightly as we rode the elevator up. The unit was small, but bright. No stairs. Grab bars in the bathroom. A little balcony that looked out over a courtyard with trees. The leasing agent smiled and used phrases like active adults and community events. Mom stood by the window, arms folded. It's fine, she said. Dad tested the recliner in the staged living area. His face relaxed just a little. On the drive home, no one spoke for a while. Then Mom said quietly, "It doesn't feel like home." I gripped the steering wheel. "Maybe it doesn't yet," I said. "Home takes time." She looked out the window. "Your house felt like home," she said. My throat burned. "It felt like I was still needed," she added. There it was. Not fear of moving. Fear of becoming unnecessary. 2 weeks later, they signed the lease. 6 months, Mom said. Month to month after that. She said it like she was conceding a war. Move-out day was both too slow and too fast. Dad's friend from church came with a truck. We carried boxes down the stairs. Mom fussed over what to take, what to leave. "Keep it," I said when she held up a dish I'd given her years ago. "No," she replied. "You might need it." Jake and Dad disassembled the bed frame they'd been sleeping on in our guest room. The room looked strangely naked with just the mattress on the floor. Mom stood in the doorway, eyes shining. "I did like looking out that window in the morning," she said. "You get such nice light." I swallowed. "You'll get good light in the new place too," I said. She didn't answer. At the new apartment, we set up the basics. Bed in the corner. Table near the kitchenette. TV against the wall. Mom moved slowly, touching everything twice. "This is it," she said at one point, voice distant. "This is where we get old." Dad chuckled softly. "We're already old," he said. She shot him a look. "Speak for yourself," she muttered. We laughed. The sound loosened something in my chest. When it was time to go, Mom walked me to the door. She fiddled with the new lock for a second, then turned to me. There was no anger in her face now. Just complicated sadness. "I still don't like it," she said. "I know," I replied. She took a breath. "You made it very clear you need your space," she said. I winced. "Mom." She held up a hand. "I'm talking," she said. "For once, let me finish." I nodded. She sighed. "When you were little," she said, "I promised myself your life would be easier than mine. I wanted you to have support, someone to come home to, a family that shows up. Tears pricked my eyes. You did, I said softly. She shrugged. I think somewhere along the way, I decided that meant I got to stay in the center of it, she admitted. Even when you grew up. Silence. I don't understand all this boundary stuff you talk about, she continued. It feels cold. It feels new. Not how we did things. I smiled sadly. I know, I said. But, she added, surprising me, I can see that you're less tense since we signed the lease. I blinked. You noticed that? I asked. She gave me a look. I'm your mother, she said. I've been reading your face since before you had teeth. I laughed through a tear. She looked down at her hands. I don't think you're selfish, she said quietly. The breath I'd been holding for months finally escaped. You don't? I whispered. She shook her head. I think you're trying to build something I didn't know how to build, she said. A marriage where you and your husband have your own home, your own rules. I swallowed. Yeah, I said. We're trying. She reached out and straightened the collar of my jacket. I don't like being on the outside of it, she admitted, but I also don't like the person I am when I feel entitled to it. My eyes blurred again. She exhaled. I need to learn how to visit, she said. Not move in. I nodded, a choked laugh escaping. That would be nice, I said. She squeezed my arm. You're still my daughter, she added, voice thick. Even when I don't approve of your methods. I smiled. You're still my mom, I replied, even when you hate my thermostat settings. She laughed, really laughed this time. Oh, I absolutely hate them, she said. We hugged at the doorway of their new apartment. She smelled like the same laundry detergent from my childhood. When we drove home, the house felt unnaturally quiet. No extra shoes by the door. No extra mugs on the counter. No voices in the next room. Jake stood in the entryway, looking around. It feels bigger, he said. Empty, I replied. He stepped closer. Empty isn't always bad, he said softly. Sometimes it's space. We walked into the living room. There was a slight indentation on the couch where Dad always sat. Mom's favorite throw pillow still on the chair. We should drop some of their stuff off tomorrow, I said. Yeah, Jake replied. We stood there for a moment, taking it in. Our home. Ours again. With echoes of them everywhere. Jake took my hand. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? I asked. For choosing us, he said. For having that awful conversation. For letting it be messy. I swallowed. I feel guilty, I admitted. He nodded. I know, he said. But guilt doesn't mean you did the wrong thing. I thought of my parents in their new apartment. Of my mom staring out a different window. Of my dad figuring out the new remote control. Then I thought of us. Of the way my shoulders already felt a fraction lighter. Of the possibility of music in the kitchen again. Of cereal for dinner. Of walking around in underwear without worrying about who might knock on the door. Do you think they'll forgive me? I asked. Jake squeezed my hand. Maybe, he said. Maybe not completely. Maybe not right away. He paused. Do you forgive you? He added gently. I looked around at the life we'd built, at the invisible lines we'd finally drawn around it. I thought about the girl who invited her parents in because she didn't know how to say no. I thought about the woman who asked them to leave because she'd learned how. Finally, I nodded. I'm working on it, I said. He smiled. That's enough, he replied. That night, when we turned off the lights, the house creaked and settled around us. It felt different. Not empty. Not full. Just ours. with room for visitors, room for family, room for future, and room finally for us.